From the gyms around Michiana, this is 16 Sports Extra.
Welcome into the 16 Sports Extra podcast live stream type of thing. I'm Jackson Neill. That's the South Bend Tribune's Kyle Smedley. Kyle, you got me over there?
I do. Loud and clear.
Sounds good. Well, Kyle, this is your first time kind of on a WNDU podcast, live stream, everything like that. Kyle's been with the paper since the beginning of this past school year, right? For the fall sports?
Yeah. I got here like I forget exactly what day it was. It was like July 29th, I think might have been my first day. It was like very, very late July, right before the high school sports season started, and right as like Notre Dame football summer camp was starting, or training camp was starting. So
basically the most intense part of the year. So you got here at a good time. But now we're here at the end of January 30th. We're talking basketball. And right now, a lot of stuff going on in high school basketball. Kyle, I want to start on the boys' side of things. Obviously, it's a Friday night. We have 16 Sports Extra coming up tonight on WNDU at 11 p.m. Got a lot of great games in the area. What are maybe some matchups for tonight that you're looking at and thinking, okay, these are some ones I'm circling and really interested to see what happens?
Yeah, I will be at Adams versus Penn. That is at Penn. Obviously that's a good one just in terms of it being, you have a lot of Northern Indiana conference stakes there, even though it is kind of early in the conference season. You only get, I think, 7 conference games if I'm thinking off the top of my head, right? And Adams and Penn are two teams who are in that top half of the NIC. Right now it kind of feels like St. Joe's conference to lose. They have once again been very impressive after, winning a state championship last year. They've taken the move up to 4A very well. But I think that Adams versus Penn should be good because I feel like those teams, in terms of not necessarily the play style, but just quality of the team, is similar-ish. I know that Penn is ranked much higher in terms of the coaches poll. I mean, they're ranked and Adams isn't, so that's significantly higher in and of itself. And it is at Penn, and I think Penn does have the best pure scoring option on either side. Caleb Kuhlman, who's a sophomore, has been incredible. Not only does he score very well, but he just kind of does everything well. A great rebounder. And I think the most impressive thing has just been like, oh, he's doing this. He's casually dropping 30 points, and he's only a sophomore. Like he's a really good player, and he's someone who people are going to have to keep their eyes on. But Adams has really good talent as well, and Jarvis Tolbert Jr., Drew Dixon, and others. And I think that both coaches, Chad Johnston at Adams, Barrett Kuhlman at Penn, both good coaches, and so that should be a good one. St. Joe plays Elkhart in another NIC game. Elkhart's been a little up and down this year. I know their best player is out for the year, but also St. Joe's starting point guard, Ethan Roseman, recently announced that he's out for the year as well. Now, he has been out for a while, and St. Joe has kind of been impressive in that, the Huskies haven't really let that affect them, which has been very impressive because, losing, Ethan's a great player as it is, but losing just your starting point guard in general can really throw things out of whack if you're not a talented and deep team that can deal with it. And St. Joe has proved to do that. I think Elijah King, for me, has maybe been the most impressive player in this area this year, at least in the teams that I cover. He has just been like, I know he doesn't, have maybe as flashy of a bag as, let's say, like a Tyrese Jones at Riley, who is also an incredible player. But Elijah King just does everything well. Like I think the most impressive aspect of his game for me is his body control. Not only does he handle the ball well, but he kind of is a guy who, when he goes up for a pull-up jumper, he never looks off balance. It never looks like an ugly or forced shot. He's not going to make every single one of them, but he pretty much is able to make it look like the right shot every time. And I think that when you have a guy like him standing out on a team that also has a Notre Dame commit in Nick Shrewsbury, that's pretty impressive. And, Peyton Miamba, who transferred from Penn, has looked good for them as well. KJ Avery has done a good job stepping into kind of the Roseman role. And obviously Eric Gaff does a great job as head coach. So, that's one that stands out. You look at other boys basketball games around here, Bremen versus Laville. I know that's a smaller school game, but Bremen has been just white hot this year. They're undefeated, ranked in Class 2A, and I believe this is the second best start in program history dating back to the 50s for Bremen.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at their record right now and looking at through their schedule. It's pretty remarkable seeing all those wins right there.
Yeah, they've if I don't remember the exact year, I want to say 52, but don't quote me on that. I have it somewhere. I just, you have me nervous here. I don't have it written down right in front of me.
We both know 52 and 53. We get those years confused. They were a lot of the same, I remember covering games back then, right?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of my prime as a sports reporter.
Of course.
But I just don't remember off the top of my head. But anyways, they just won the bi-county tournament, which is always tough to do just because, you get that small school environment, you get the home crowds, and with something on the line, it's always hard. I know they had to beat Triton to get there, and Triton is one of the best teams in 1A. And so I think that was an impressive win for Bremen, but Bremen goes back to Laville this time to actually play Laville. And again, you look at the records and it's like, oh, Bremen should come out with a win here, but it's hard to beat a rival on the rival's home court. Like, it's never easy to do that.
And Laville's home court, I've been there a couple times. That's a tough place to play, man. Like that it's weird. I've seen some weird stuff in that gym where it's like teams that you think are awesome start shooting cold. And it's like that's just kind of a place where in the Michiana region, I always find some weird results can happen in the Lancers' favor.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really difficult for them, even with that home court magic, to stop Bremen's Chase Devine, who is already past 1,000 points as a junior and is well on pace to become Bremen's all-time leading scorer this season as a junior. He's a great player and he doesn't really have off games, but I think if Laville wants a chance to beat Bremen, they're kind of going to have to contain everyone else. Like, Chase is a great player, and I kind of compare it to like how people go against Notre Dame women's basketball, where it's like, you're not going to stop Hannah Hidalgo. She's going to score 20 plus points every game. But if you stop everyone around her,
that's a win. You can pick up the win. Exactly.
Right. But, I kind of look at it that way with Bremen, right? Like, you're not obviously, no disrespect to Chase. He's not as good as Hannah Hidalgo.
I don't think anyone is as good as Hannah Hidalgo. I think that's, we have to put that one out there.
Right. Yes, that's the point I'm trying to make. But it is comparable in terms of like, you're not really going to stop him, but if you can stop everyone else, you have a chance of winning. Some other games that stand out to me in terms of high school matchups, LaPorte and Michigan City have two really tough games tonight. Luckily, they're both at home, but LaPorte hosts Crown Point. Crown Point looks like one of the best teams in the state. They have been incredible. Really, I feel like only Fishers has looked better than Crown Point this year. But LaPorte has had a really good season so far. They have been impressive. They're 12-4, and they have wins against teams like South Bend Adams. They beat Michigan City twice actually, and they've looked improved this year. But Crown Point is really tough. And then Michigan City plays Portage. Portage is off to an incredible start. They are 15-0. Michigan
That's pretty
City
good.
Is 9-6. Yeah, 15-0 is pretty good, especially in Class 4A. That's a good start, But I know it's a Duneland Conference game between Portland and Michigan City. It is at Michigan City, but it's going to be really hard, I feel like, for Michigan City to beat a team like Portage. But I think that it bodes well for them if they're even able to keep it close. Michigan City's 9-6. They have talent on that roster. They just beat Elkhart 90-45.
It doesn't, like when you say 9-6, it doesn't feel right. Like that's my biggest thing when I look at that roster. I look at some of the results. It's like it doesn't feel like a 9-6 team.
Yeah, Michigan City's beat Adams and Riley. And again, I know Elkhart's down a little bit this year, but they beat Elkhart by 45 points.
That's a real win. That's a real win right there.
Yes. It doesn't. Elkhart's down, but they're still 6-7 and they are competitive. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not like you're beating a team that is winless and hopeless. It's not like you're beating a 1A team like that, right? Like
Exactly.
Elkhart
No,
is a
this
4A team.
Yeah, that's a real program, and like you said, down year is still 500 for that program. That's a good program. So to beat them by 45, no matter the year, is really, really good. One thing I did want to ask about, talking through these games, two teams you mentioned were South Bend, St. Joe, and Penn, as having both, some big games tonight. On the boys' side, in the NIC, that's kind of the thing I've been circling throughout this season is. You mentioned Kuhlman on Penn. He's a kid I've been hearing about since he was like in 8th grade. He is an absolute stud. We know how good South Bend St. Joe is, won a state title. They still have a lot of talent. We talked about that. When you look at that conference race, I mean, you said it's the Huskies to lose, but how close do you think the Kingsmen are to being right there? I mean, and even Marion, they're also 2-0 in conference.
Right. Yeah. When I say it's the Huskies conference to lose, that's no disrespect to Penn or really any other team, Marion, Riley, Adams, whoever. It's just like that's maybe my seal of approval for St. Joe. They have really impressed me. Like they, you look at they're 10-4, Penn is 10-3, but those losses from St. Joe, Chesterton, Cathedral, Mount Vernon, Fortville, Silver Creek. I mean, those are all great teams. Like they're not losing games that they shouldn't. They haven't been caught slipping, I guess is maybe the best way to put it, right? And I think you can look at Penn's schedule and you can point to that Hamilton Southeastern game as a game where they were caught slipping. Hamilton Southeastern, even though they're 7-8, they play an incredibly tough schedule. They're an Indianapolis area school, so obviously they're a good team. But that's a game where you look at it and you think Penn probably should have won that one. And I was at that game. I was at Penn Hamilton Southeastern. I felt like Penn should have won that game on paper. They did not play well. Barrick, the head coach Barrick Kuhlman said they just did not play well. He didn't like the energy out of them that night. So yes, you can wash that game off as like maybe a bit of an outlier. But the fact is, St. Joe doesn't have that outlier yet, right? And that's kind of the margin of error we're working with here between the two. They both have quality wins against, people. St. Joe was able to beat Riley by 12. Riley is a great team, despite the fact that they lost some games maybe they shouldn't have, particularly. I was just giving Michigan City their flowers, but that probably should have been a game that Riley won. I know that Tyrese Jones didn't play that game, but I still think that Riley probably should have taken care of business there. But you look at Riley and Penn, and there's a game for each of them where they were, again, for lack of a better term, caught slipping. Hasn't happened for St. Joe yet, and that's kind of my stamp of approval. And with all that being said, it is close, right? Like when Penn and St. Joe play each other on February 10th, that's a pick 'em.
Yep.
If you ask me, I've been clear about it on this show. If you ask me who I think is going to win, I would say St. Joe. But I think that's just because St. Joe is to me, a more balanced group. I think that pure scoring potential, Caleb Kuhlman is probably the best pure scorer on either side.
Yes, he can just put the ball in the bucket. So it feels effortless, honestly, for a lot of times watching him.
Yes. However, you look at St. Joe and having King, like a 3 of King, Shrewsbury, and Miamba.
That's tough.
The fact of the matter is that St. Joe's best 3 are better than Penn's best 3, in my opinion. And I think that's maybe where games are won and lost, not so much who has the best player. I think depth really matters when it comes to these thin margin of error games. And that's why I like St. Joe. And I also just think that the style of basketball that St. Joe plays, where they press you the whole game, they just play so fast. It's really, really hard to win a game when a good team is controlling the tempo the whole way. It's not I think if Penn wants to win that game, they have to figure out a way to play the game at their tempo. And that's really tough to do. Eric Gaff doesn't really allow that to happen.
And this is a program, and this is a team that a lot of these guys were for that state title run. So when it comes to big time games, if it's a game to decide the NIC, they've been in, no offense, bigger games. A state title game is as big as you can get at this level. I want to transition to girls now. Oh, what do you say?
I was just gonna say, I mean, some of these kids have been in 2 state title games.
Exactly, that's a good point.
They won
Yeah,
last year, they were there the year before.
Completely forgot about the year. Yep, last year's win was blocking out the memory of the loss the year before. But yeah, this is a program that's been, very one of the best in the state. I want to go over to the girls' side now, where we actually have some sectional draws. Now we actually kind of know what's going to happen in the postseason. Take me through maybe like 2 or 3 of your like really watching out for this part of the bracket because you think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think that the lead here for me is like Marquette Catholic. They should win their sectional, but the reason I lead with them is not so much because I think their sectional is one that we have to be weary of. It's more so like, to me, Marquette Catholic is the front runner to win the state championship in Class 1A. They are a very, very good team. We just talked about how St. Joe has the state championship game experience. Marquette Catholic does too. Like, not only has Katie, the head coach, not only has she won state championships as a coach, but like Lania Davis has played in the state championship game. They lost that game 2 years ago. She's been in that game. She knows what it's like to be in a game like that. And I think that, talking to players who have been to state championship games, but they've lost, is always really interesting because doesn't matter if it happened last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they don't forget what that felt like, not only to play in that game, but specifically to lose. And that's something that they kind of, for lack of a better term, obsess over. And maybe the reason why that team lost that game, they work as hard as anything to get better at that particular aspect. I know for Lania Davis, who recently became Marquette Catholic's all-time leading scorer in boys and girls and has surpassed 2,000 career points. Truly one of the best girls basketball. I mean, when you score 2,000 or more points, you're one of the best players in state history, in my mind. I know that there's a decently long list, but it's not long enough to where that type of statement is a reach, in my opinion. So for her, like her buckets are going to come every game. She's going to score. She's going to get rebounds. She's going to force steals. For her, the biggest thing that she wants to work on to make sure that Marquette Catholic makes a deep run in this tournament is to stay out of foul trouble. I know that was an issue for her in the state championship game 2 years ago. I know that was an issue for her in the semi-state championship last year, the semi-state championship that they lost in overtime last year. And she told me preseason, like, I cannot get in foul trouble in these games, right? Like, I can't do it because it's not fair to the team. And we are a team that's good enough to make a state championship run. And it's not excusable for her to take that away from them, in her words, due to being in foul trouble, right? Like, the other team, I mean, the last thing Marquette Catholic wants is for their dream of winning a state championship with this group to end without it being just the other team was better that day. They don't want any self-inflicted wounds. And so that's a sectional that I'm paying attention to, just in terms of like how dominant is Marquette Catholic going to be. I know that Couts has a good record. Like they play Couts in the first round. Couts has had a good regular season, but Marquette Catholic beat them by 20 plus points in the regular season. So I don't want to say it's like, Couts can't win, because it is hard to beat a team twice, but we've
already seen
Marquette
that.
Catholic. We've already seen it. And so I would be very surprised if Couts wins that game. Props to them if they do, but I look at that in terms of the most interesting one, just because I think that Marquette Catholic is the team to beat in their class. If you want maybe a sectional field that is more unpredictable, maybe, I think, you could look at some, I guess, in terms of unpredictability, it feels like it's going to be Warsaw versus Northridge in the 4A sectional. That also involves Elkhart, Concord, and Goshen. Elkhart has had a nice season for sure. Like they've been good. Shania Stout, more than 1,000 points. She's been a good player. But after they most likely beat Goshen in the first round, they have to play Warsaw, and Warsaw is simply one of the best teams in the state.
Yes. Yes, that
So
is a team that returned a lot from last year's awesome team, and it looks like they haven't missed a beat.
yeah, I mean they're incredible. Like Bricker and Zartman are insane, and they just I know that they hit a snag with a couple of losses, and I think they had a little bit of injury trouble. But for a while there, I was thinking like Warsaw is the team to beat in 4A. Like they are a team that could go all the way, and I still think that. I still think that it's between them and Homestead, in my opinion. Homestead beat Warsaw in the regular season, so I would really like to see Homestead Warsaw down the line in the state tournament because both of those teams are incredible. But I think that Northridge should make it to that championship game against Warsaw. It's going to be an uphill battle for them, especially now that senior Cam Conley is out for the year with a knee injury. She not only is just a good player for them in terms of scoring and just on court production, but she's that team's leader. They don't have a lot of seniors, and she was one of them. So her injury really hurts. I was at the game where Penn recently beat Northridge, and Cam was kind of acting, to me at least, like as a coach on the bench. She was very vocal and trying to will her team on. Northridge only lost by 5 points to a really, really good Penn team that I don't want to gloss over Penn's sectional, but that is certainly Penn's sectional to lose, especially now that Washington is down after, decades of dominance.
It's
Washington has had a rough season. It feels like Riley and Adams could be a really fun game if Adams beats Mishawaka. That would be a semifinal because Riley has a bye. Adams plays Mishawaka in the first round, and when you get that South Bend versus South Bend game, that could be a lot of fun in terms of the fans. And also, those two teams have played each other this year, and they've been single-digit margins both times, and I believe they split. I believe Riley won one and Adams won one. So
I was at the last one actually back on January 16th, 2 weeks ago today, and it was at Riley. Riley won it by 1 point. 61-60. I'm looking at the other game. It was Adams won at 55-52. Like these, and watching the game too. I mean, I think it was Riley was out into a pretty good lead, and then Adams just starts making some threes. Like they have a couple shooters on the outside where they made like 3 straight threes. All of a sudden, it's a different ball game. If we get that matchup again, that could be really, really fun. We only have about 5 minutes left here, Kyle. So I wanted to just move things along. I want to get to a little Notre Dame women's basketball because they had a bad result last night. They lost on the road at Cal. This is now 4 out of the last 5 games have been losses. They're 13-8 on the season, 5-5 in the ACC. My one question to you, are we looking at a team that could possibly miss the NCAA tournament?
Short answer is yes. We are looking at a team that absolutely could. Am I going to predict that they are going to right now? No, it feels a little early, especially with how the ACC has looked this year in terms of like Louisville's the cream of the crop, and then like everyone else is like, I don't want to say interchangeable, but like anyone can beat anyone. It feels like, unless you're Boston College, no disrespect, but
not a good season for them.
You look at no, and that's okay. You look at Notre Dame's remaining schedule, they have Stanford, Virginia Tech, Virginia, NC State, and then Syracuse, and another game against Louisville. Now, they have games against Wake Forest and SMU in there as well. Those 2 games, although they are on the road, like Notre Dame really should beat Wake Forest and SMU.
They need those wins.
Like, those are like games that you can't really afford to lose, and that it would be pretty – those would be really telling losses. I mean, you look at anything is possible. I mean, Notre Dame lost to Georgia Tech earlier in the year in a game that they probably shouldn't have lost. But then you look at those, like I said, those games against Stanford, Virginia, Virginia Tech, NC State, Syracuse, and Louisville. All of those games to me, except for Louisville, all those games to me feels like 50-50s. And I think with the roster that Notre Dame has, really only playing 6 players And that sixth player really normally only plays about 15 minutes a game.
Gisela Sanchez played 19 last night. You're right. It's less than 20 minutes usually. That's sixth person, which is not a lot.
Yeah. Right. And so with that being said, like 50-50 games are not good for this team just because the margin of error is already so slim in terms of what you're working with roster sizes that these 50-50 games are really tough because it's already like just on paper in terms of records, it's already neck and neck. And then like, let's say the game is close throughout. Normally what happens is the team that is deeper is going to win the game. And we've seen it lately that Notre Dame, there's not a team that Notre Dame is going to face that they're deeper than. It's just not going to happen. And so I think what could save Notre Dame's season is they really need – they have said that KK Bransford's injury is not season-ending. We don't have a timetable on her return, but we have been told that her injury is not season-ending. I mean, that could mean that she doesn't return until the ACC tournament, which I feel like would potentially be too little too late. I think Notre Dame really needs her to get back on the floor within the next couple of weeks. I mean,
Yes.
I would like to see her play. You know, they have 8 regular season games left. I think it would be wise if she played at least 4 of those.
I would definitely agree.
If she plays 4 of those games, I know it's still you only have 7 players who you're playing, but that makes a big difference, especially when KK was a starter. She's a great defender. She can get you buckets. Like, I think that her loss is really, really been what has hurt this team. I mean, obviously it was going to be hard to begin with all the losses you had in the offseason due to the transfer portal, graduation, WNBA draft, whatever. And then you have one of your starters get hurt, and she's now missed almost 2 months.
Definitely.
They need her back because Hannah Hidalgo can only do so much. Cass Prosper has maybe been a little more streaky than we originally thought. Don't get me wrong, she has certainly improved her game a lot since last season. I mean, she has now turned into someone who is a legitimate contributor for this group. But as of late, she's been a little up and down. And so I think two keys for Notre Dame really for the rest of this year on if they want to make the tournament is Cass Prosper has to get more consistent and KK Bransford has to get on the court.
Exactly. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for joining us today. You can find his work in the South Bend Tribune on high school sports and Notre Dame women's basketball. Thanks so much for checking out the 16 Sports Extra stream today. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks for having me.